Welcome. I'd like to call the meeting to order today of the agenda of our Public Works Committee meetings Tuesday, September 25th, 2018, and we'll begin with roll call for determination of quorum.
Modrick.
Here.
Scott. Here. Roberts.
Here.
Nordstrom. Here. We have a quorum.
Thank you. At this point, it's general public comment. Is there any members of the audience that would like to express concerns of anything not on the agenda today? If not, I close public comment opportunity. And we move now to consent items. And our consent items are items 1 through 13. Is there any council member that would like to remove items from consent? If not, may I have a motion to approve?
I just want to pull one.
All righty.
I want to pull 13.
Thank you. Item 13. Anyone else?
Move to adopt the rest of the meeting.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 13. Authorize mayor and finance officer to sign golf course food and beverage concessions agreement with Platinum Restaurant Group, Mark's Pizza, for a 5-year term from March 18, 2019 through March 18, 2024. John.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I see Jeff walked up there. He knew I was going to ask him a question. Hey, Jeff, I'm reading through this contract. I was just curious, as far as the monthly rent, what was the monthly rent on the contract before? I can't remember that, and I was looking for it this morning, couldn't find it.
It was. Is this working? Okay. The first 2 years of the previous contract, there was no rent because they were making improvements to the kitchen and the facility, and so that was their rent was going back into the work for the kitchen. The remaining 3 years was $30,000 a year.
Okay, so it did go up substantially, but one of the things that I noticed, I believe on the first contract, they paid part of the utilities, and the city is paying all of the utilities now.
That is correct, yes. We changed that just because it made it easier from a bookkeeping standpoint for us to pay it. We felt that the increase in the rent more than covered that utility amount.
And what do you know what the average of the utilities were? Can you get it for me? I'm just curious about it more than anything.
I can get that for you, yes. I don't know offhand.
Okay, and one last question, I'm done. What's the square footage of the actual building that they are using, occupying, and you can get that for me later too?
I'll get that for you as well, yes.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Move to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We now move on to our consent calendar, non-consent items 14. And with that, we have our water reclamation presentation by Dave Van Cleve. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. I am Dave Van Cleve, the Water Reclamation Superintendent, and I've been here for a long time now. All right, first to our mission statement, and we have a fairly simple mission statement, and basically protecting the public health by providing for efficient economical collection and treatment of wastewater. And then a few years back we picked up a stormwater division, and so we also provide for self and well-maintained stormwater drainage system. And the last part is somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but we like wildlife, and we really don't care much for burning rivers. And if you remember back in the 70s, that was the case in a lot of the country. And we'd like to keep the water flowing downhill. And really what we do is just try to provide a very basic health and safety need for our residents. As far as our organization goes, we encompass 2 utilities, and the 2 utilities, of course, are the water reclamation utility, which is the sanitary sewer utility, and the other utility, of course, is the stormwater utility. The water reclamation utility, the sanitary portion, we have functionally broken down into basically 4 areas, 3 primary ones, and one is the Sanitary Sewer group, and they take care of the maintenance and inspection of the sanitary sewer collection system, and they also take care of 7 lift stations in town that pump wastewater out to the wastewater treatment plant. The second, of course, is the treatment plant itself, and that group takes care of the day-to-day functioning of the wastewater treatment facility in accordance with our state surface water discharge permit. And then we have a lot of help in that because we dispose of residuals, and those are actually taken over to the solid waste facility where they're either incorporated into compost or they're direct buried into the landfill. Third function is the environmental process group, and those folks take care of the laboratory and the industrial waste functions, and our industrial waste functions are basically regulatory in nature. So there are categorical and significant industries in town that the EPA has basically promulgated that duty over to local municipalities if we're large enough to be able to take care of those issues, and so we regulate them based on the number of metals and those type of things that they may have that they're discharging. And the last basic area, of course, is the stormwater maintenance and inspection group. We are a regional utility as far as wastewater treatment is concerned, and so as such, we serve 25,369 customers. That was at the end of 2017. And we also service 4 sanitary districts. So we have Blackhawk, North Dale, we've got Rapid Valley and Rapid Canyon that we service currently. So who are we? We've got 40 people basically that take care of those functions, and divided up as you can see above. The collection crew is basically 9 people. Wastewater treatment, we've got another dozen people there that are dedicated to the treatment facility, and then we've got 4 people that work directly with the lab and industrial waste programs. And then our stormwater crew is another 6 people, and then we have administration, and it's myself. We've got 3 supervisors that take care of the supervisory functions of those groups, and then 2 part-time, 3/4 time administrative secretaries. And then when you include a few support personnel, like some of our locators that work for the Water Division we pay for, it comes to a total of 40 FTEs. Talk just a little bit about finance. I just threw up some numbers about current budget. Our budget's a little higher than normal with our CIP budget this year in the water reclamation side. Other than that, it's a relatively normal budget. Just looking back at our 2017 expenditures, we're $10,800,000, and our current fund balance $1.3 million. As you recall, we had a rate increase last year, or coming into 2018, and that rate hike basically has the average single-family residential customer pays $28.12 a month. That's based on 5,000 gallons of wastewater in a month. And as part of the rate resolution, then we're looking at an increase of 5.5% in 2019, and that will raise the average customer cost to $29.69 a month. And of course, that rate hike was designed to accommodate inflationary increases and to begin building the reserve for the upcoming facilities plan projects that were identified, where we had $62 million in needed upgrades over the next 20 years. And as far as the revenue side is concerned, we're looking at about that $11.5 million point again for this year. On the stormwater side, similar kind of story. We look at about $2.5 million to $2.4 million a year in revenue on that side. So our expenditures typically run about $2 million a year, give or take what capital improvements may be on the board. And so with that side, we've got a little higher fund balance. Our fund balance, this is as of the end of August, was $4.6 million in that fund balance. Okay, just talk a little bit about some of the different functional groups here. Our collection system operation, and you can see some of the numbers that we have up there for work that was done in 2017, but in 2017, the collection system length expanded by 3.1% to 346 miles of sanitary sewer. Our group tries to clean all the sanitary sewer that's 12 inches in diameter below. We do clean some of it above that, but we want to do those smaller lines on an annual basis. And sewer televising, that's tracking on about a 20-year schedule. That is something we would like to improve upon, because it's going to take us 20 years to get through the whole system and look at all of that. And then also talking about the bad side of things, the SSOs, which refer to sanitary sewer overflows. In 2017, we had 16 sanitary sewer overflows, and with 11 of those blockages were from publicly owned lines. The other 5 came from privately owned lines, and we report those as well. So, things that are going on today, the bottom of the slide, I'll bring that up first. Sanitary sewer overflows are down for 2018, even though we had an extremely wet year with some of the highest recorded rainfall months on record. And it looks like we're on the way to maybe having the 3rd highest rainfall amount for a year this year, which it does affect us. But our SSOs are down. We've had 5 public SSOs and 1 private so far year to date. And just so you know, SSOs, anytime that sewage comes out of the system, that's called an SSO. One SSO may be responsible for more than 1 basement backup. So if you have 1 blockage that would flood out 5 homes, that's considered one SSO. We're working on the collection system master plan, and that's proceeding. It's a 100-year plan, and we're doing surveys of manholes. We're doing interviews with surrounding communities to determine the future needs in the surrounding service area, and we're finding some interest there from surrounding communities. And then the Maple Avenue sewer, which, as you recall, was the big rain event that we had back in May, and that our mayor was able to witness firsthand. In that area where we had some backups of basements. We are working on that investigation yet, and we're working with a local, or beginning to work with a local engineering firm to help us out with the last phases of that investigation. We want to start doing some smoke testing and things that are going to require a lot of neighborhood interaction so people understand what we're doing, and that's still ongoing and coming up. Okay, talk a little bit about the treatment side of the house. And 2017 was a pretty average year. Our flows were down a little bit in 2017 overall. It's kind of a typical year. So plant performance in 2017 was generally pretty good, although we did have some violations of E. coli bacteria related to our disinfection system last year. And we have some good news on that front for 2018, but something we don't like to see. But those violations were very intermittent problems, of very short duration that happened. And so you can kind of see the basic figures of where we're at for the year for 2017 up there. So our plant performance is pretty solid in 2018, and I knock on wood because the last plant violation that we had was actually back in September 20th of 2017. And so our UV system has functioned well this year, and we've got about 5 days left in that season, and then we can shut it down for the year. And so we're feeling pretty confident we'll get through this year. There was some reports out there that have circulated around in the newspapers referring to rivers at risk. And some of those things that have gone on, we've decided to respond to. And so we decided to start sampling Rapid Creek above and below the plant to see exactly what's going on with the creek. And the bad news about it is that we are finding high fecal coliform levels in Rapid Creek. That's above the plant. And so it's somewhat ubiquitous through the creek, and it's probably related to our population here that we are contaminating the creek. But I can tell you it's not coming from the plant. It's coming from above and out of our service area. So we will keep monitoring that and trying to figure out ways to reduce the amount of coliform bacteria in the creek. When some of the reports were published, they were showing every month that they tested, they were high levels. Well, we're doing more testing that, and we do get excursions once or twice a month, but it's on a daily basis, not on a monthly basis. So that's the good news part of it. But something we need to keep looking at and trying to figure out where it's coming from. We are kicking off one of our first major facilities plan projects coming up in 2019. We'll be looking at putting in an additional clarifier out at the treatment plant. And so this is part of that $62 million project, facilities plan project, in expanding the plant, and this increases reliability for the treatment plant so that we can shut things down to work on them and keep the plant functioning correctly. So on to the environmental program statistics. These folks take care of monitoring our industries, and they also monitoring the sand, oil interceptors in town for food service industries and those type of things, trying to prevent oil and grease, we call it fats, oil, and grease fog, from entering our system and causing backups. And so the bigger industries, we go out and we do actual sampling and monitoring of their discharges, and we write permits for them, and so we go through those industries quarterly. And then we do a lot of inspections of the minor commercial interceptors. We did 994 inspections last year, and this was, Richie used to do this job, and quite a task to get through all those interceptors and make sure they're properly maintained. The laboratory itself conducted 19,000 tests. They do 48,000 measurements and calculations from those tests that they do. And so they're monitoring the treatment plant for proper performance and also regulatory compliance. So what are they working on right now? We just recently updated our FOG, our fats, oil, and grease interceptor program. We made some modifications to it. We found in some cases the interceptors are not working as well as advertised, or that people simply don't understand how often they need to be cleaned, and it's far more often than once every few years, I can tell you that. And so we've had to do some work on that program, and we're working with the contractors and those folks in the industry to try to look at better sizing on these interceptors to keep the fats, oil, and grease out of our system. Our folks in the environmental program are also researching high selenium levels that we have found in our system. As part of our industrial waste program, we have local limits that we have to set, and it's based on the amount of metals that can be removed in the treatment plant. And so then we have to regulate our industries to ensure that they don't exceed certain levels of metals so that we can remove those before they go into the creek. And we're finding high selenium levels coming through the treatment plant. We've done enough study on it to find out that it's basically endemic to the area, that we have soils with high selenium levels. It's not coming from industries per se. And so we are going to re-examine our local limits and look at that to see what industries can charge. But the selenium isn't coming from industries in town, and that's the good news. We are re-examining our local limits. We'll be bringing that to council in a couple of months. We have to do a number of tests and studies on the treatment plant to see what can be removed. And then we have to set the local limits for the amount of metals, and then we'll bring that back to you once that testing is completed, and it goes to both the council, and then it will also have to go to the DENR for their approval. And then they're also doing some studies of facility performance. This is just related to future process upgrades, understanding how the plant functions in different areas, and helps us determine exactly what we're going to put in place as we go through the plant upgrades. Stormwater statistics from 2017. This is kind of, again, somewhat of a normal year in 2017, unlike the year we're having this year when we had, again, record rains, and it's created some issues for us on the stormwater side, obviously. And we keep working on putting things back together. So we found out that there was 155 miles of storm sewer that we have right now, 6,419 catch basins, and we've got over 70 miles of drainage channel and 139 stormwater detention ponds in the system right now. So in 2018, with the wet weather, we found out we needed to spend a lot of time mowing grass. And so that's something we've picked up from Parks Department. We purchased a large new mower. We're looking at some other smaller type of unit that we can use in some of these areas, because according to what I just heard, the snow is on the way, and so we'll be handling that too this year. A lot of what we've done this year is related to repair of stormwater drainages with the high water levels coming through It tends to move a lot of sediment, rock, and those type of things, plugs our drainages. And so we've been doing a lot of repairs on these drainages to fix things back up from some of the heavier rains that we've had this past year. In a couple of those pictures, you see kind of what looks like a white blanket, and that is actually something relatively new to us that we're trying, these concrete blankets, and it is literally a blanket with concrete, and it turns into concrete. And so we're trying that to see if it will help us maintain these drainages a little better. When you put rock down and riprap, it becomes very difficult to keep that cleaned out and mowed and those type of things. And so we're trying some things with some of these blankets now to see what they will do. So with that, that is basically my presentation for today. And so if you have any questions, I'd certainly be willing to answer.
And we've got a motion, and Chair recognizes Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I ask a question?
Please.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It's very informative. What is your concern about the selenium levels, if I'm saying that right?
The problem is that the treatment plant only will remove so much. And so the state and federal government look at it and say, well, if you've got too much selenium passing through the plant, then you need to further regulate your industries to prohibit the amount of selenium they're discharging. Well, by researching this, we're finding out it's not the industries that are doing it, and so we've determined that already at this point that further reducing selenium limits on the industries is really not going to solve the problem, and that's the real concern. As we tighten these limits up on industries, it becomes very difficult for them to meet these low levels. And so that's why we're studying this and trying to figure out exactly where it's coming from. So.
I probably should have started with this question, but what is selenium?
Selenium is a metal. It's a micronutrient that we all utilize. I think it's part of bone health and some of those kind of things. And it's like a lot of other metals that are found in the environment. We can use all of them in small amounts, but if it's too much, they can start having toxic effects on fish and wildlife, or human beings for that matter. So.
And then so the final question I just have for that is this a new test to find out that these levels are higher than what has been anticipated, or have they actually increased?
It has increased. We have seen sporadic higher levels of selenium, and it's getting to the point where it was picking up enough in our sampling that, okay, something is going on. And really what we think it is the city is just literally expanding into those areas where the soils contain more selenium, and that's where we're picking it up from. As we move to the north part of town and some of the expansion that's going on up there, that's where we're starting to see some of that coming from.
And with the wet weather, as you said, with more sediment or more surface materials being washed into the...
That plays into it, certainly.
All right, thank you. Excuse me, I guess my voice is telling me to shut up, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, we have a motion. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you again for the presentation. We enjoy it, and it's a nice fit for what we are working towards with reclamation and our increases. Thanks so much. Anything else from the council? Motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. We are adjourned.